FEMA's here. You know what FEMA just told us? We can't get you a phone. I have no ID. I have no way to pay for food. He has no way to get gas. We're stuck. So we have to sleep in a car that's leaking with the same clothes we've had on since the...
It was a 30-foot wall of water just pushing through Lake Lure all the way down. My house washed away. I had a cat, I had 2 geckos. I lost it all.
It was like by a miracle that we made it. I started to call 911. I could not get through. I called again and I was able to get through. And I said, the water's coming in our house. And they said, get to higher ground. And I was like, okay, we're going in the attic. And they're like, we're overwhelmed with calls right now. That's all we can tell you to do. Your adrenaline's pumping. It's like, this is, you're saving your life right now. You're doing it.
You know, in Florida, hurricanes are kind of just like a part of life in a weird way. Don't get me wrong. They still suck. Obviously, they're still devastating, but it just becomes a part of your reality that you get used to dealing with, that you get used to preparing for. Even the people along the coast, even people with beachfront property, they kind of know what they're getting themselves into, let's say. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, they don't want nothing to happen to their homes. Obviously, no one wants their homes destroyed, but when you live in these areas, you know what you're getting yourself into, and hurricanes are kind of like another holiday. Like every year, you know Christmas is coming around, and you're going to spend way too much money on gifts. Every year, you know Thanksgiving is going to come around, and you might have to hang around some family members you haven't seen in a while. Maybe you'll eat some good food. Well, just like Thanksgiving and Christmas and Halloween, as you see, we got the Halloween decoration right here. Just like these holidays, hurricane season kind of becomes like an extended holiday period for people in this area where you're just used to every year you get hit by a few storms. It's just the way it is. Usually, you ride them out. You wake up the next morning. You see a lot of Florida Man clips online of people floating down the street in inflatable pool toys and stuff like that. But sometimes, you know, once the power gets cut on, the realization sets in about how devastating some of these storms are, especially this storm, Hurricane Helene, has to be one of the worst I've ever seen. You know, waking up after riding out the storm in my area, which wasn't directly hit, but we were affected. Most people around me still don't have power. You know, waking up the next morning, I never expected that things would be as bad as what they are, especially in places like, you know, Augusta, Georgia, places in Tennessee, Asheville, North Carolina, and other areas up in Western North Carolina. I never expected it to be that bad. And it's crazy because, like I said, it's become part of the norm here. You're prepared for it. You're expecting it. It's not a matter of if a storm hits you, it's when. And the when is always going to be every freaking year. So it's crazy when you see people who aren't expecting it. When you see people who aren't necessarily prepared. When you see areas hit where these people aren't used to having hurricanes as a part of their daily life. It's really crazy. And honestly, I don't think we'll ever know the true number of people who have died and the people who are missing. Because you got to think about it like this, folks. We've covered a lot of true crime stories on this channel. We've covered missing person stories on this channel. You all know how hard it is sometimes for them to find people. Sometimes these hikers go missing in a national park, or they go missing in the woods, and it takes them years sometimes to find the remains or the body. Sometimes, you know, a killer ditches a body somewhere, and it takes investigators years to find the body, if they ever find the body. I mean, let's think about the Gabby Petito case with Brian Laundrie. We watched the FBI And local law enforcement use all of their resources in one area, one little area, trying to find Brian Laundrie, and couldn't find him for weeks, right? Even though his body and his remains were right there. So when you think about what happened up here in the mountains of North Carolina and in these small towns in North Carolina, you have to think about the fact that these are hundreds of missing people, hundreds of bodies. And if you want me to be realistic, we're going to get graphic here. If you want me to be realistic, we're looking at into the thousands. They say hundreds. I think it's well over 1,000. And this isn't like an area that is unbothered, right? You got freaking catastrophic flooding. You got debris everywhere. You know, pieces of houses, floating cars, you know, pieces of barns, buildings, you name it, anything you can think of, it's all floating around. It's all piled up in random places. So some of these bodies, realistically, they're never going to find. Some of these people who are missing, they're never going to find. Some of them may be buried under who knows how much mud. Some of them, as we've heard, you know, are floating down the river and may end up God knows where. So that's the reality of what we're dealing with here, folks. It's a harsh reality, but that's the truth. And, you know, a lot of people don't like really talking about stuff like that, but that's what it is. And like I said, think about the true crime cases you may have looked into in the past. Think about how hard it is sometimes for them to find just one person who went missing in an area that is undisturbed, right? Now think about trying to find over 1,000 people in an area that just got hit with historic flooding, trees everywhere, houses everywhere, everything everywhere. You know, you got homes that used to be right here that are now miles away because they got swept down the freaking floodwaters, right? So think about people. You know what I mean? And I've already heard from people on the ground who've said that they're finding bodies hanging in trees. And I don't want to get too into detail, but like hanging from their clothes and stuff. Because, you know, the waters were really high. Sometimes their clothes may snag on a branch or something like that. So now that the waters have gone down, you know, people who are looking for people, some rescue teams who are in the area, they're finding people in the trees and stuff right now. It's absolutely horrific. But I want to go ahead and roll this clip. Let's hear a little bit more from people who were there experiencing all of this madness, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
So this would be so super cool if that was true, but it's not. It's actually the point of why I made that video. Local news is saying 60, 70 dead in our county, but if you walk up to any first responder or law enforcement officer and say, is there any update on the death toll? I don't even want to say the number because I've done it. And so is every other local here because we're genuinely concerned and have been fed up with our local news for not covering it the way that they should. There are hundreds and hundreds dead. And there are some places that they've not even started searching for the bodies because the mudslides are too thick to get through. There are some houses that are still buried under the river. They have ordered cold trailers to our town to keep the bodies. Does that sound like 200 bodies to you? Does that sound like 200 bodies? We're not some tiny little town. Asheville has a large hospital and multiple morgues. So I will say it again, and I will continue to say it. There are hundreds and hundreds dead, and there are thousands missing. If you want to believe one little man behind a screen with a microphone instead of believing our entire community, please feel free to do so. You're not here. You're not helping.
So as all of this craziness is playing out, as we've discussed, FEMA is on the ground now, but what they're doing is mainly they're stopping other people from giving out supplies and helping other people. They're stopping people from flying in and delivering supplies and trying to rescue people who are stranded. They've even stopped Elon Musk's team from handing out and giving out Starlinks so they would have internet in the area. But some FEMA whistleblowers have come out now. The story's getting even crazier, folks. So now even FEMA is exposing FEMA. Some FEMA agents who I guess are down there, they're secretly speaking out, which is why they're whistleblowers. And they're claiming that they're there and haven't been given any orders. FEMA has these people on the ground. They're put up, staying in hotels that could be occupied by people misplaced by the storm. But no, this is what FEMA does. When these disasters happen, FEMA brings in all types of personnel, and they put them up in these hotels that could be used for the survivors of these disasters who have lost their home. We saw this with the Maui fire as well. And most of these agents, most of these people working with FEMA do absolutely nothing. They do diddly squat, literally. And that's what these whistleblowers are saying. They've been there now for a couple of days, cooped up in their hotel rooms with no orders at all. So they're there doing nothing. They don't know what to do. Meanwhile, a lot of the FEMA people who are actually doing things aren't doing anything productive. They're just going around and shutting everyone else's operations down. It's crazy. But let's go ahead and look at this article, or look at this document here real quick. Dear Secretary Mayorkas, yesterday you stated that the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is part of your department, does not have enough funds to make it through the hurricane season. This news comes after FEMA has spent hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars on migrants due to border czar Kamala Harris's open border instead of prioritizing funding for Americans impacted by disasters. My office has been in contact with whistleblowers in numerous emergency management functions at the federal, state, and local levels, and they all point to the same critical mismanagement issues. FEMA has wasted taxpayer funds, misappropriated funds, and left other federal, state, and local responders without deployment orders on the ground. As reported and further confirmed by my office, hundreds, if not thousands, of service members were deployed by the Department of Defense to North Carolina and have sat idle, waiting for FEMA. We have confirmed FEMA employees deployed on the clock, awaiting orders in hotels. FEMA pre-disaster aid was withheld, exacerbating the emergency. It is also public that NGOs have purchased airline tickets for migrants through the use of FEMA funds. The aftermath of Hurricane Helene is a major disaster, and your waste and unpreparedness are leaving Americans in distress, unable to access food, water, or medicine, and expecting help with none coming. So, right there, stories already getting crazier. And I think what we're about to get in. These stories always play out the same way. I'm no Nostradamus, I'm no know-it-all, but if you've covered one of these stories, it's like you've covered them all. So we're about to reach the point, give it a few days, and we're going to reach the finger-pointing stage, okay? If you don't know what the finger-pointing stage is, you will be learning in the days coming, because we will be discussing it, because that's what's about to happen. You're about to see nothing done to help anyone. You'll see a lot of jibber jabber. You'll see a lot of, politicians talking, but nothing's going to be done to help anyone. And you're going to see a lot of finger pointing. But we'll be getting into that undoubtedly in future videos. For now, let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell, and I'll talk to you all very soon in the next one.